Hi, welcome to Yoga Merge. My name's Anna Hansen, and today we're working on deep stretch. So if you've got some tight hips or hamstrings, let's start to loosen those up now. So let's start in hands and knees. We'll take our fingers, spread them wide, knees right underneath your hips. Feel your belly hugging in towards your spine. So what I mean by that is we're not gonna kind of sag down, right? We'll lift up and away. From here, just start to lift the crown of your head and your tailbone on your inhale. And exhale, round and hollow your back. Inhale, just finding a little bit of movement. We're gonna do that 2 more times. So if this is early in the morning or maybe late in the evening for you and you haven't moved your back a lot, just really take time to move through every little piece of it. One last time, exhaling, rounding your back, and then come to a flat back again, still feeling that sense of engagement. Keeping that, let's tuck our toes and press back to a down dog. And we'll just pedal it out a little bit. And in down dog, if you've watched a fair amount of these videos, or maybe you've seen pictures but you haven't done a lot of yoga yourself, a lot of times you'll see people with their legs straight, but if you have a pretty tense hamstrings, you might really need to bend those legs so that you can soften your chest down towards your thighs. Otherwise, you'll end up with kind of a rounded back and almost being in plank position, which is really hard. Let's take 2 more breaths here. You can shake your head no, you can nod yes. From here, we'll step our feet together. Just inhale your right leg up and back, and exhale, we'll step it through. From here, you may need a little extra cushioning for your back knee because we're going to place it down, so you can roll up your mat, or maybe if you're on carpeting, it'll feel fine, or you can always grab an extra blanket. I like to untuck my toes on that back foot, but if your patella or your kneecap is pretty sensitive, then you can keep them tucked for a little extra support. But from here, let's really lengthen our back. And then we'll crawl up, moving into our Anjaneyasana, rolling your shoulders down your back, and feel your neck getting nice and long, right? So everything in our spine is long and tall, and we're not overarching, feeling any pressure in our low back. Make sure your heel is right underneath your kneecap. One more breath here. Let's inhale. We'll reach up for a little bit more length, strengthening our hip flexor, lengthening it. And exhale, we'll take our hands inside of our foot. You're going to scoot your foot out to the side, angling your toes out maybe just 20 degrees so you feel your hip opening up a little bit. And we'll move towards lizard pose, so you'll start to come down. Now, if your hips are really tight, you might only be able to bend your elbows just slightly. If you have a block or anything that, like maybe a pillow or something that you could put your elbows on, if you can't get them down to the floor, you can always do that. Or if you're really open, you can come all the way down to the floor. Just watch that back foot. It'll want to kind of sickle inward, but we're going to lengthen it back instead. And just sit here for a few breaths. See if you can open up that hip a little bit more. Not forcing anything, just asking it to open up. Oftentimes when we feel a lot of tension in our hip flexors or our hips in general or our hamstrings, it's all related, right? So we can't really have one without the other. We'll take 1 more breath here. And then slowly, carefully crawl yourself up. You can move that block or pillow out of the way if you grabbed one. And we're going to keep our left hand on the ground, and we'll reach our right arm up to the sky. If you want to, if you're in it pretty deeply and you feel like you could go a little further, you could roll to the outside edge of your foot. Let's do 1 more breath here. And exhale. Slowly float that hand down. You're going to toe heel your foot back to the center of your mat. And then you'll shift your weight backward and kick out your front foot for a half split or Adho Mukha. So inhale, you'll lengthen forward, and then exhale, dip forward towards your kneecap, trying to keep as much length as possible, right? So we're not rounding, but lengthening. And there'll be some rounding to your back, definitely, but just trying to think as long as possible. And I really like to flex my foot and pull my toes back towards me so my muscles are engaged. This leg isn't soft, right? It's hard to stretch when we don't have muscle engagement. And if you're, again, really tight and getting your hands to the floor is even a challenge, you can always grab blocks on either side. Or maybe if you don't have blocks, just something steady that you could put your hands on. Let's take 2 more breaths here. Again, just asking your hamstrings to open up. Feel your right femur bone or your thigh bone pulling back towards your hips. Last breath like that. We'll shift forward again. Tucking your back toes. You can scoot your foot forward if it's too far back. Move that front foot right to the center of your mat. Step back. Or take 20 steps. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be that pretty. And then we'll move back to down dog. From here, inhale, left leg up. Exhale, step it through. We'll come to the other side. So placing your knee down, you might have to move your cushioning. Lengthen out. And crawl up. And we're just coaxing our muscles open, right? Feeling a lengthening in your back right thigh, all the way down to your toes. Again, we're not sickling here. Rolling our shoulders down our back, hugging our ribs together, lengthening our tailbone down. Let's take 2 more breaths. Push into your heel. And inhale, rise all the way up, reach up. And exhale, hands down. Scooching your foot out of the way, we'll move towards our lizard pose. So right hand down, left arm, oops, not left arm up. I lied, that's coming soon. Lizard first, crawl down. I was testing you. So again, this is the one where you can put your elbows on a block. You could stay all the way up on your hands, right? If your hips are tight, don't force it. It's not gonna help you find release. If your breath starts to get really short and shallow, that's a good sign that you might have gone too far. And of course, any sharp pain we want to avoid. We just want to feel a sensation of like a dull stretch. From here, let's crawl up. We'll take our right hand down, and now we'll lift our left arm up to the sky. Feeling your right shoulder rolling down your back, right? We don't want to be collapsing down into it. We want to be lengthening. And then if you want to, you can roll to the outside edge of your left foot, opening your knee up. That is only an option if you feel like you have pretty open hips, right? Take an inhale, open your chest. And exhale, slowly float your hand down. We'll take our weight to our back knee, kick out your front foot. Inhale, lengthen. And exhale, fold in. Shoulders down your back here, and just slowly, gradually moving towards your leg, right? We don't want to just kind of move into something and jar our bodies. That's probably the biggest mistake I see in the public classes that I teach, that people feel like they have to go as far and do the hardest possible version as they can. And I think if you ask any yoga teacher, they probably practice more restraint than a lot of their students. Let's do 1 more breath here. Slowly folding in. Shift your weight back forward. Taking your foot to the center of your mat. Hands to the mat, back knee lifts off. And then we'll just step back or take a few steps. And press all the way back. Let your shoulders relax down your back. And before we come to seated, we'll do a pigeon pose. So inhale your right leg up, lengthening up and back. And exhale, take your knee just behind your wrist. You'll shift your back leg back until you feel like you're nice and centered. And this is really key in pigeon pose. So you want to pull your left hip forward. If you drop to the right, we're shortening all of this, and we can't really get into our hips. So you want to think lifting up, pulling your right hip back, and there may be a ton of space between your seat and your mat. You might be up pretty high, and then just place a cushion or a blanket underneath your seat, and you can sit back down on it. From here, we'll crawl all the way forward, and we'll just be here. Now, if you have some knee injuries or this is not comfortable for you at all, and it will be a big stretch no matter how flexible you are, but if it doesn't feel like a good choice for you, then what you can do instead is a seated, double-seated pigeon. So you'd take your, in this case, you'd take your right foot underneath, or your left foot underneath and your right foot on top, and you'd stack your shins like Lincoln logs. Now, they might be pretty far apart, right? And that's okay. But what you'll want to think about is lifting, sitting really tall, and then I like to take my palms and press into the ball of my feet, and then press the ball of my foot back, and you'll feel this knee kind of drop down, and then with that length, you can shift forward. And if you're already in your pigeon laying on the ground, don't worry about any of this. You don't have to do it. These are just options. And the last and final option, which is really good if your hips are really tight, is to come down to your back, take your right foot across your left thigh, and draw it in. And you just grab the back of your thigh, if you can grab that, and then rest your head back down on the ground. Now, if this is even too much, you can always just place your foot here, right? That might be all the stretch you can do today. So lots of options depending on where you're at. We'll just take 2 more breaths wherever you are. And let's slowly, gently crawl ourselves up, placing your palms on the ground. And just scoot your foot forward, tuck your back foot, see if you can lift your knee up. And we'll lift it up, bend our knee, and just circle your ankle for a little bit. If you are in any one of those other pigeons, just make your way gently back to down dog. And again, you can lift this right foot. And then slowly we'll place it down. We'll sweep our left leg up and back. And exhale. Place your knee just behind your wrist or come into your other pigeon pose if you're going to do a double seated or a reclining pigeon. If you're here, again, think right hip forward, left hip back so we're nice and square. And again, your seat doesn't have to touch the ground at all. Lift up and slowly start to crawl forward. And make sure that if you are pretty far off the ground, that you do put something underneath your hip. Just because if our muscles are really kind of engaged to try to hold us up off the ground, then they won't really be able to relax in a pose like this when we do a little bit of a longer hold. Think about just breathing into those muscles, softening a little bit wherever you're at. And if this is a new kind of form of exercise for you, then give yourself an opportunity to find these poses. Oftentimes when we're adults, we think we're supposed to be good at everything the first time around. And if we could all be master yogis the first time around, I don't think it would be so appealing. So the challenge is part of the reward. Let's take 2 more breaths here. And start to crawl up gently or make your way back to down dog if you're in one of the other pigeons. We'll slowly lift up, lengthen back, bending your knee. And even though we're kind of reaching our foot out behind us and swirling our ankle around, think about dropping your left shoulder a little bit so you're not so crunched on that right side. Slowly place your foot down. We'll come down to hands and knees again. And this time just swing your feet off to one side. We'll come all the way to seated. We'll extend our feet out in front of us, getting up nice and tall. And here's another one for people that have some really tight hamstrings. If you find that you're back here and you're trying to reach for your toes and you can't get very far, then find a pillow or a bolster or blanket and sit yourself up higher so you can get on your sit bones and you can start to shift forward. Right? Otherwise, this is really just stretching your back. You can't even get to your hamstrings. So from here, let's sit up tall. Inhale, arms up. And exhale, keeping that length as much as you can, fold forward. Inhale, lengthen, get a little longer. And exhale, fold in. Again, inhale, lengthen. Exhale, deepen the stretch. We'll do that one more time. Inhale, lengthen. And exhale, fold in. From here, roll all the way up. Let's take the sole of our right foot. We'll place it on our left thigh. We're going to shift ourselves forward so we're angled towards that space between our knee and our leg. Slide forward. Facing towards your left leg, right shoulder dropping down. You'll feel a little twist in your belly potentially. And inhale, lengthen. Exhale, fold in. One last breath. Slowly crawl your way back up. And we'll come to the other side, so draw your left foot in. Right leg extends out, sitting tall. Place that foot on your inner thigh, and your knee might be pretty high, and that's okay too. Inhale, lift and lengthen, and exhale, crawl out over your extended leg. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, fold it in. Think about dropping your left hip down towards your shin. One more time. And slowly, carefully roll up. We'll take the soles of our feet together. Bitilasana, sitting up tall, cobbler pose. Lift and lengthen. And then exhale, fold forward. And from here, you can take your elbows and place them on your inner thighs to help kind of coax your hips open. Or if you'd rather have it be more of a back bend, lift and lengthen and fold forward. And by back bend, I don't mean a back bend, literally opening up the opposite direction, but just in the sense that we're bending forward and stretching our back. One more time, inhale, lengthen. Exhale, fold in. And slowly roll up. Take your hands to the outside of your knees, draw them in together, and just scoot yourself up towards the top of your mat. You'll grab onto your shins and roll onto your back. Give yourself a nice squeeze. And then from here, we'll do another hip stretch. So you'll take your right knee on top of your left, and we'll draw in. And you might just be able to grab your shins here, and then rest your head back down. That might be plenty of a hip stretch for you. Or you might be able to reach down and grab the outside edges of the soles of your feet for happy cow or smiling cow and draw them down towards you. Let's do one more breath here. Slowly soften that. Let's take our knees to the left, keeping them stacked just the way they are, and gaze to the right. Keeping your right shoulder on the ground if you can. Getting a nice twist for our spine. This is a great series to do in the morning, just to open up all of those kind of creaky muscles and joints if you're anything like me. They take a while to wake up. Let's inhale, come back to center. Pressing your low back down into the ground, you'll draw your knees back in, and then we'll switch. So left knee will be on top, right knee on bottom. You can draw your shins in towards you, and that might be the extent of your pose, right? And you'd feel a big stretch in your seat on the left side, or you'd reach down and grab the outside edges of the soles of your feet and draw them in. See if you can start to soften here. Right, you know you're almost done with your practice, ready to move on with the rest of your day. So let your body and your mind have a little bit of stillness here. And let's slowly take our twist. Knees to the right this time, gaze to the left, reaching your arm out, shoulder on the mat. You could close your eyes. Just feel your breath moving throughout your body. And inhale back to center. From here, we'll press our low back into the ground again. Draw both knees in. And reach down for a happy baby. Hands on the outside edges of the soles of your feet. Heels pressing up, low back pressing down. Two more breaths. And slowly release that. Draw your knees back into your chest for one big inhale. And exhale, let everything go. Savasana. Palms facing upwards towards the sky. Press into your head, lift your shoulders up and off the ground, roll them underneath you and place them back down again. And let your feet flop open. So your toes will be angled out, eyes closed. Again, feeling your breath rising and falling. And one of the hardest practices of yoga is to be able to find silence in your mind. So allow yourself here to just let go like you did with your physical body. Let your mind kind of just quiet itself, creating space between thoughts. And I'll leave you here, but if you want to stay in your Savasana for longer, please do. Your body will thank you. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you so much for visiting me here on Yoga Merge. Again, my name's Anna Hansen. Namaste.